For more than 2 centuries, the Rothschild family stood at the center of European finance, building a fortune that survived wars, revolutions, economic collapses, and the downfall of rival dynasties. While countless wealthy families rose and disappeared, the Rothschilds maintained their influence across generations with a level of discipline rarely seen in history. Their success began with Mayer Amschel Rothschild in Frankfurt, who created a system designed not merely to generate wealth but to preserve it. Rather than allowing his children to pursue independent paths, he strategically positioned his 5 sons in major European capitals including London, Paris, Vienna, Naples, and Frankfurt itself. Working together as a coordinated network, they shared information, protected common interests, and acted with a unity that gave them advantages few competitors could match. Family couriers carried coded messages across borders, allowing them to react quickly to political events, wars, and financial opportunities. This structure helped transform the Rothschild name into one of the most powerful forces in Europe. Yet beneath the financial strategy existed another system that received far less attention. The family became increasingly concerned with the threat posed by outsiders. Across Europe, they watched wealthy dynasties lose control of fortunes through marriage, inheritance disputes, and divided loyalties. In many cases, wealth was not destroyed by bad investments but by family fragmentation. The Rothschilds concluded that protecting their empire required controlling not only money but also marriage itself. Over time, family members were encouraged to marry within the extended family, particularly among cousins. What began as a practical strategy gradually evolved into a defining feature of the dynasty. These marriages kept wealth concentrated, prevented outside influence, and strengthened internal loyalty. Financially, the system worked remarkably well. Assets remained under family control, inheritance conflicts were minimized, and the Rothschild fortune continued to grow. From the outside, the arrangement appeared highly successful. The family projected an image of stability, discipline, and unity that few others could rival. However, while the closed system protected wealth, it also created consequences that unfolded quietly across generations. As family trees folded inward and the same bloodlines repeated, concerns began appearing in private correspondence and medical records. Certain relatives were described using vague terms such as fragile, nervous, exhausted, or emotionally overwhelmed. These descriptions rarely provided specifics, but the pattern appeared repeatedly. Rather than becoming public matters, such issues were handled discreetly. Family members experiencing difficulties were often removed from visible roles and sent away for rest, treatment, or extended travel. Explanations remained vague, and discussions were kept within a small circle of trusted relatives and physicians. In elite families of the 19th century, mental health conditions were rarely discussed openly, and the Rothschilds were no exception. Physicians often used broad terminology that concealed more than it revealed. Medical records were minimal, names were omitted, and details were carefully limited. The goal was not necessarily deception but containment. Public reputation remained protected while private problems were managed quietly. Over time, however, the repetition became increasingly difficult to ignore. Similar conditions appeared in multiple branches of the family, sometimes separated by decades but connected by blood. Researchers who later examined family histories observed that the pattern resembled inherited vulnerability rather than isolated incidents. The very strategy that had preserved financial power may also have concentrated genetic risks. Wealth could be protected through planning, but inherited traits followed their own rules. Silence could hide symptoms from public view, but it could not prevent them from reappearing in future generations. This realization represented a challenge unlike any financial crisis. The family had mastered risk management in banking and politics, yet biological inheritance could not be controlled through contracts, influence, or careful planning. The issue remained largely hidden from public view until one family member made the pattern impossible to dismiss. Liberty Rothschild, born into privilege and surrounded by resources, displayed signs of serious mental illness that could not be explained away through vague descriptions or temporary diagnoses. According to documented accounts, she was diagnosed with schizophrenia, a condition that required long-term care and attention. Unlike earlier cases that disappeared behind ambiguous language, Liberty's situation was clear. The family provided support and protection, but her life unfolded largely outside public attention. She did not occupy prominent social or business roles and remained absent from the public image carefully maintained by the dynasty. Her experience highlighted the limits of wealth and influence. Despite generations of planning, there were some outcomes that could not be managed away. Liberty's condition forced recognition of a reality that had lingered beneath the surface for decades. The inherited vulnerabilities suggested by earlier records had become visible in a way that could no longer be ignored. For some observers, her life represented evidence of the long-term consequences of repeated cousin marriages and a restricted gene pool. While scholars continue to debate the extent to which genetics contributed to specific conditions within the family, the pattern itself raised important questions about the costs of preserving dynastic control. One individual who appears to have understood these questions deeply was Miriam Rothschild. Unlike many relatives who focused on finance and administration, Miriam pursued science, studying biology, zoology, and genetics. Her scientific background shaped how she viewed inheritance and disease. Rather than treating mental illness as a subject to avoid, she approached it as a biological reality worthy of investigation. In the early 1960s, she publicly supported research into schizophrenia, attaching her name to efforts aimed at understanding hereditary mental disorders. This decision marked a significant departure from the traditional family approach. While previous generations emphasized privacy and discretion, Miriam chose scientific inquiry. She did not expose private family records or publicly discuss relatives, but her actions acknowledged that inheritance involved more than money and status. It also carried risk. By supporting research, she signaled that understanding genetic vulnerability was more productive than pretending it did not exist. Her efforts reflected a broader shift in attitudes toward mental health and heredity during the 20th century. Science offered a framework for understanding patterns that earlier generations had struggled to explain. Yet even as research advanced, the central paradox of the Rothschild story remained. The same system that helped preserve one of the world's greatest fortunes may also have amplified inherited weaknesses. Their strategy achieved extraordinary success in financial terms, allowing wealth and influence to survive where countless rivals failed. But the concentration of bloodlines carried consequences that no banking model could eliminate. The Rothschilds demonstrated that control could shape business empires, political networks, and public reputation. What it could not fully control was biology. Across generations, inherited traits moved silently alongside wealth, passing from parent to child regardless of status or power. The family's story, therefore, becomes more than a history of money. It becomes a reminder that even the most carefully designed systems have limits. Markets can be predicted, alliances can be negotiated, and fortunes can be preserved, but inheritance follows rules that no dynasty can completely escape. Behind the image of discipline and success stood a quieter reality, one revealed not through public scandals or financial failures, but through patterns hidden in private records and family history. The Rothschilds mastered the art of protecting their empire from external threats, yet the greatest challenge emerged from within, carried through generations in the very bloodline they worked so hard to preserve.